Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 19th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. We got BC, Washington, Oregon to the right. Check out our mid-latitude cyclone. It is rapidly developing here, otherwise known as bomb genesis, and that is a classification that it's reached once it drops a certain amount of pressure in a 24-hour period. It is a legit meteorological term. And taking a look at the clash of air masses, look at this subtropical moisture, much warmer to the south and much colder spilling out across the Gulf of Alaska. And where these two air masses meet is what's known as a mid-latitude cyclone, and that is what drives these systems. The clashing air masses, as it pushes off into our offshore waters, is going to become one of the lowest low-pressure systems ever recorded up here towards the Pacific Northwest. It's going to have some big impacts for some areas, but this is not the typical windstorm that we usually get here, where we get the powerful southerly winds moving up the Willamette Valley and the Puget Sound into southwest BC. We're dealing with a different direction. So some areas that are typically fairly windy are going to be wind sheltered, but this is going to be a violent windstorm for other areas. So this is going to be very hit and miss here across the region. We're going to go over some of that detail here as we go through the video this morning. Taking a look at some of the weather stations out there right now, it is basically the calm before the storm. Literally, I selected this weather station out here near North Bend. We'll check out some of these stations tomorrow to see what kind of wind gusts they did get. And you can see, again, light winds right now, pressure just starting to fall. That's the first indicator for this approaching storm. But this home weather station is really great. Highly recommend it. Stores all the data for you in the cloud. Click on the link down below to save 10% off on one. So closer look, mid-level water vapor loop just now starting to spread some precipitation towards the region here. We've got some rare blizzard warnings across some of the mountainous areas. We've got high wind warnings all over the place, wind advisories, and we're going to have some huge surf from this system as well. And when this one rolls through here, folks, we got additional storm development that is going to come later as we go through the week, so we are not done. But you just got to marvel at the beauty of this storm system spinning up off our coast. So next 60 hours, Doppler radars, what will they look like? Well, you can see as we go through about 4 p.m. today, you can see the precipitation shield moving up over the area. Strong cold front off the coastline. Starts to snow across the Cascades of Oregon first. Starts to move up the Washington Cascades as we go through tonight. You notice it doesn't, not a lot of precipitation here on the east or the west slopes of the Cascades for some of western Washington. You're going to have some of these strong downsloping winds that are going to be eating away a lot of that precipitation at times. But still, for the mountainous areas, you're probably going to have some blizzard conditions, some very strong winds, some blowing snow, some low visibilities. And I also want to point out this feature that looks like it's going to be moving through tomorrow. It's going to be some cooler air east of the mountains, and as we go through Wednesday morning, there may be some accumulating snowfall out there as we go through Wednesday morning. Heads up for that. And on a side note, I did see a lot of that on social media yesterday. Some, again, a novelty, really a pretty good forecast here because, it's stuck on some areas. We have some slushy accumulations, but again, not a big disruptive snowfall here for places west of the Cascades. Now, taking a look at Seattle, Tacoma, you can see wind advisories. They've pretty much put them out for most places, but again, there's going to be some areas that are big-time wind sheltered versus others. But again, we're dealing with a non-dominant direction, which can cause tree damage at a much lower speed. And you can see the high wind warnings for some of the foothill areas and the blizzard warnings for some of the mountains. And there's actually a hurricane force wind warning just off the coastal waters here. The purple is storm warning, and we got high wind warnings for the coastal areas. Just so much stuff going on. We got winter storm warnings for the east slopes of the Cascades. Now, looking towards southern Oregon, big winds coming up the coastline. They're probably underdoing some of these winds a little bit here, but still, they're talking about the strong, damaging winds expected as we go through today on in through Wednesday morning. Now, this is looking at Portland. We do have wind advisories up and down the Willamette Valley, but still some models disagreement on just how strong these winds are going to be. High resolution models showing gustier winds, 45 potentially 50 miles per hour. Lesser for the Portland Metro. We're not looking at huge winds for the Portland Metro, on any of the weather models, really. The European is only showing gusts into the 30s. So I got to point stuff like that out. You can see the winter weather advisory and some high wind warnings here for the east slopes of the Cascades also. And again, you can see that hurricane force warning, Florence south along the Oregon coast, and some high wind warnings elsewhere. So this is Pendleton. You can pause this and take a look if you need to. You can see what weather risk major, 4 out of 5, some gusts to 60, potentially even higher across some areas, especially the higher terrain, exposed ridges. And again, you're going to get that southeast flow, and that could be a non-dominant wind direction, could cause some extensive tree damage and power outages. Now, quickly, let's go over some of the snowfall you can see as it moves in on the day-to-day through tomorrow morning. And you can see a little bit of that into some of the lower elevations for eastern Washington. You can see across some of the higher terrain. But the Cascades really targeted here, at least with this initial storm. And if I scroll back and forth, you can kind of see a lot of that was actually falling here late last night and whatnot. But again, just kind of a novelty west of the Cascades. Now, look at this day 2 moderate outlook. This is mainly for California. It does clip portions of Oregon. That's kind of why I'm showing it here. You kind of want to be aware of this if you're going back and forth across the California-Oregon border. And on day 3, a rare high risk for California, and some of that slight and moderate does get into Oregon and to western Oregon. And there's day 4 as that atmospheric river will be bouncing around. Now, total precipitation in inches, this kind of does a good job pointing that out. You can see the excessive precipitation amounts for some areas. Not bad across Oregon, Coastal Range, Washington, but the Cascades, this is nothing that is very unusual for November. And then you can see additional precipitation occurring as we head off in towards the upcoming weekend. We got additional storms riding up the coastline here. Some of them look kind of interesting, so we're going to be watching that. We're not done yet, folks. So one more look here. This is the ensemble members as of yesterday. Look at the bright pink here, sub 940 millibar low. Are you kidding me? That's just ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it off our coastline. It's a good thing this isn't a little bit closer, because this is going to be bad enough. It's basically like a vacuum out here, and it's sucking the wind through all the terrain features we have here across Pacific Northwest. So again, some areas are going to be sheltered by these terrain features. Some areas are going to have the winds enhanced, and there is definitely big time tree damage potential with these easterly winds. Again, non-dominant direction. Some of the models are showing some of that wind getting out over some of the lowland areas. More on that here in a moment. And then we scroll off into the future a little bit, and you can see again strong mid-latitude cyclone development off our coastline as we go through the end of the week. But first things first. Now, taking a look at the North American model, mean sea level pressure. So again, you don't have to be right here to get these effects. This is a big pressure gradient. You can imagine the higher pressure east of the mountains. This wants to rush through the gaps and over the terrain and all kinds of stuff, and powerful frontal systems that extend well off of the low pressure center. I get some interesting comments talking about, hey, this is too far offshore. It is not, folks. It is not. The pressure gradient is what matters. It doesn't matter where the low pressure is. You're going to get effects well away from that low pressure center, like this atmospheric river. You can see these very tight gradients across some of California and the Oregon coast as we go on in through tonight and into tomorrow morning. That kind of weakens and sits there and spins and fills, and then we worry about the next system. So taking a look at 80-meter wind speeds, let's look at some of the timing here. So this is early this morning, already 5, 6, 7 a.m. It's already picking up on some of the Oregon coast, especially Cape Blanco down there. Brookings picking up as we go through about 10 a.m. here. You can see the wind start to pick up as you go through 10, 11, the Stampede Gap. There's a Stevens Gap here as well. And you see the easterly winds start to rush out across some of the San Juan, some of Whidbey Island, Strait of Juan de Fuca. And again, you see this component. This is not the normal big southerly wind component that rushes up, but at the same time, you can see some of these strong winds ripping across the higher terrain and through the gap areas. And yeah, and also hope you're not in a boat out here as you go through the day today. Some of these winds could be approaching 100 miles sustained, 100 miles per hour sustained. And then as we go on in through Wednesday, we start to relax that gradient. Not completely, as that storm is still going to take its time filling out there, but then we wait for the next one. Now, this is the European, the 10-meter max wind gust. And when you start to see these yellows, that's 50-plus miles per hour. These are very strong wind gusts here. And again, out of an unusual direction. And you can see some of these trying to get out towards the I-5 corridor, SeaTac, even up towards Seattle. There are wind advisories up here. And again, the high-resolution models are showing more. I'll show you that here in a bit. But look at some of these big wind gusts up the Oregon coast. You might get some gusts up over 70 or even towards 80 miles per hour a little bit further south. You can see not that unusual for the Washington coast as far as big windstorms go, but it's still going to be quite windy for the immediate coast and some of the higher terrain, Strait of Juan de Fuca, and some of the Puget Sound lowlands. But you look for the European across the Willamette Valley, only into the 30s there. However, higher terrain, watch out here. And this could extend out towards places like Walla Walla also. Now, looking at the accumulated 10-meter max wind gusts on some of the high-resolution models here, and you can see it does show some stronger winds through the Willamette Valley. Look at some of these gusts getting up across Seattle and Everett, Whidbey Island, San Juan's, up towards the coastal areas of the Puget Sound. Those would bring some big problems here because, again, you're out of the east. Some pretty excessive tree damage would occur with this, and virtual lock right now for some very strong winds across the foothills of the Cascades here. So yeah, heads up for that. And what is going on here with the reversal of these winds? So if you look at this as what's known as a sounding, if you look at these wind directions here, you're going out of the southeast. And then when you go above 5,000 feet, you notice how they turn out of the southwest. So what happens here, you get stratification of the atmosphere. You make this stable air, and you can see it reflected just above 5,000 feet there. The temperature is warmer. So when you bring these strong winds, they'll want to rise. The atmosphere wants to rise here, but it cannot. Stable air does not like to be lifted, so these are going to refract and bounce and oscillate back down towards the surface. You could get some of these breaking waves, these gravity waves, back down into the lower elevations. In typical events like this in the past, Enumclaw, Buckley, Black Diamond, and Maple Valley, some areas even further out could be hit by these surfacing mountain waves. So hopefully that makes sense. So basically you're trapping these winds in the lower layer there, and you're bouncing them around because, atmosphere that is stable does not like to be lifted, and these will oscillate back down towards the surface. Now, taking a look again here at the European, you can just marvel at that low pressure center out there. And again, you don't have to be next to the low to feel some extreme impacts from it. And then as we scroll off in towards Thursday afternoon, look at this development here. This is more of a classic windstorm for the region, but it is just far enough away right now that it would bring a fairly strong blow to some of the coastal areas and maybe some gusty winds up the Willamette Valley and Puget Sound. We have to watch this closely because this is a monster load. Don't let that 943 millibar load that was further off to the west that's going on right now fool you. This is an extremely strong storm. So we really have to watch the track of that as we go through this upcoming week. So as if we haven't gone through enough here, we've gotten another storm out there. But again, it doesn't look like a major region-wide windstorm, but if that changes track, that could change in a heartbeat. And the GFS, let's take a look at that. Look at that low pressure center right there. And you notice just far enough away so it can't get its southerly gradients into the interior areas. Put that into motion and we go through later this week. Does the GFS show it? You betcha it does. That's a very powerful storm. And again, the track is going to mean all the difference with that one. So some housekeeping here, just kind of looking at Gold Beach up the coastline. You can see our initial storm system here. Some gusts up over 70 are possible. And you can see the next system here. That would be a very windy solution for the Oregon coast. Siskiyou Summit, big winds are incoming here. Again, hopefully everybody out there driving a big rig and a truck is under alert today because it's going to be some unusual crosswinds, very strong winds through some of the passes and canyon areas, and those downsloping winds coming off some of the mountainous areas are going to be quite strong. And there would be that next system here. Snoqualmie Pass. I mean, look at this, 61 miles per hour. That's just crazy talk here. This is easterly wind. Also, it's going to be kind of wild. So yeah, hopefully everybody driving a truck out and about today is sitting things out. Or at least you're alert to these conditions. Silverton, look at this gust, potentially over 60 miles per hour. Seattle-Tacoma continues to show gust into the low to mid 50s, all the way out towards SeaTac. That could cause some extensive tree damage, and you can see how the ensemble's hinting back and forth, hit and miss with that next storm system there. Here's Renton, gust 55 miles per hour on the latest control, Snohomish County. And you might balk at this wind a little bit here for Payne Field, but 41 miles per hour kind of out of the east or southeast there, that could cause some issues here because that is an unusual wind direction. And then there would be the next storm later this week. Stevens Pass, there is another gap north of the Stampede Gap known as, Stevens Pass. It's a lower area in the terrain where you can get some acceleration of some of these easterly winds. And this is no joke here, gusting up into the 50s on the latest control run for the European model. And also, just a heads up, I'm just going to put this into motion. You can see what's going on as we go through the day today. It's about 10 a.m. There's about 1 p.m. There's 4, there's 7, there's 10, there's very early Wednesday morning, but you can see these waves approaching the coastline. This is going to correlate here with some of the high tide activity for Wednesday, so that could get kind of wild out there. You can see we're pegging the scale here as far as some of these wave heights are concerned. I mean, look at this maximum individual wave height showing 67 feet out there. So yeah, pretty intense stuff as you go through the day today and tomorrow, and then maybe again with that next system. But yeah, you just kind of have to marvel at this here. I'm going to try to get this video out nice and early here this morning. Just going to Going over things here. It is with us. It's off the coastline here, and if nothing else, you got to marvel at the weather models here and some of the forecasts that predicting this storm, many days in advance. So here it is. Let's marvel at it. It's going to be spinning up. It's going to look like a cinnamon bun here as we go through the day today and tonight, and especially by tomorrow. It's going to be this big, mature mid-latitude cyclone just wrapping around itself. So anyway, hope you guys are enjoying the channel. Channel is going absolutely crazy. I think we're getting close to 10,000 subscribers just in the last few days. A lot of viewers coming in here. Again, none of this is possible without you guys. If you want to monetarily support the channel, click the join button down below. But otherwise, click like and subscribe. We'll do this all again tomorrow. I may be live streaming at some point today or tomorrow as well. I plan on trying to chase those east winds and then maybe going out the coast for some big wave action for tomorrow. So anyway, click like and subscribe. We'll do this all again later, and I will talk to you guys then.